Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode where we're reading Witchlings. We left off at the end of chapter 15, and now we are starting on chapter 16, The Truth About Bog's Fairy. So before we begin, let's take a deep breath in. And another one for good measure. And begin. Chapter 16, The Truth About Bog's Fairy. Snow was coming down on Ravenskill. Again. Doesn't the snow get sick of coming here? Try some new towns for once, Seven shouted at the sky as snowflakes clung to her eyelashes and melted on her skin. The witchlings were walking to the center of town from the toad race, their hearts still racing with adrenaline as they went over the match in detail, weighing in on what they thought were the Bog's Fairy team's weaknesses. The witchlings were walking to the center of town from the toad race, their hearts still racing with adrenaline as they went over the match in detail, weighing in on what they thought were the Bog's Fairy team's weaknesses. We all know there's no way they're beating Ravenskill. Tia will be eating her words when she's up against Holo Vex, and I, for one, would go ahead and put Holo first. Let him take the lead, and they won't be able to make it up, said Valley. No way! If anything goes wrong, I'd rather have Holo at the end. That way he can make up for lost time, said Seven. His toad, Lorenzo, is good under pressure. What do you know? Your toad is a dud, Valley scoffed. You don't even have a toad, screeched Seven, to which Valley responded with a snowball launched squarely onto Seven's forehead. Thorn looked nervous until the two witchlings began to laugh, and she breathed a sigh of relief. Seven felt guilty. She knew Thorn worried about them fighting, but she was starting to understand this was just how she and Valley joked around. One thing was for sure, and it was one thing Seven never thought she'd admit or feel in her entire life. She really liked Valley Pepperhorn. Seven laughed, wiping the snow off her face when a voice called out behind them. Thorn? Thorn LaRue? Thorn's face went every shade of pink on the planet. If you want to run, just say the word, Seven said, guessing Thorn might be worried about seeing witches from her old town. But Thorn just shook her head no. It's okay, she said softly. I have to face them sooner or later. They all stopped and turned around, Thorn lifting her chin up like Valley had taught her to. She looked defiant, not quite tough, but getting there. And then her face softened. October? An older witch, maybe 16 or so, was jogging toward them with a huge smile on her face. She was wearing a Bog's Fairy raccoon's uniform and had long, curly red hair. She also wasn't alone. Running with her, hand in hand, was Tia Stardust. Thorn whispered a string of, "Oh my goats, oh my goats, oh my goats," until October and Tia were standing face to face with the witchlings. October opened her arms and shrugged when Thorn ran to her, hugging the older witch tight. I didn't notice you on the track, Thorn said, pulling away. Your hair got so long I didn't even recognize you. I was moving too fast. That's the problem, October laughed. Oh, sorry. This is Tia Stardust, my girlfriend. I don't think you two ever met. Tia, this is Thorn. I used to tutor her back in Bog's Fairy. Tia waved at the witchlings. Nice to meet you. You too. You were great out there, Valley said, blushing. Thanks. It was all Bob. He's resting in his tank back at the Speg. But you can meet him later if you want. We'll be here until tomorrow. Thorn clapped her hands together. Oh, will you? Where are you staying? Do you want to stay in my house? You must be exhausted. Tia, I love you, oh my goats. Are you hungry? Thorn said breathlessly. She's short-circuiting, Seven whispered to Valley. October laughed. We were actually starving and wouldn't mind some quiet time away from the team. Want to join us at Evanora's? Thorn smiled. I love their cakes. We'll meet you there then. Just going to get changed out of these uniforms. We smell like week-old shushrooms. Speak for yourself. I smell worse, Tia said, and the two witches took off in the direction of House Hyacinth's grand house. Coven houses had luxurious guest rooms with showers and any kind of beauty treatment or ointment you could want for your members. Another thing to add to the list of stuff she'd never get, thought Seven. But that didn't matter right now because they were about to have lunch with Tia Stardust, and Seven was excited for a different reason than Thorn. Tia's speech had been really bugging Seven. The Grand had been called away to another town, the uncle indisposed, just like they had been during the impossible task in 1965. Maybe it was nothing, but if there was something fishy going on in Ravenskill, maybe there was something happening in Boggs Ferry too. And it was the perfect opportunity for Seven to find out. Evanor's tea room was tucked between a witch doctor's office and a clothing shop for toads and other familiars. The small restaurant was covered in ivy, and Evanor's tea room was written in gold flourishes in one giant exposed window. The window seats are free, Seven said, running inside before someone else took the coveted location. The 3 witchlings and the other 2 older witches settled into cushiony floral chairs around a table covered with an old-fashioned doily tablecloth. They ordered seaweed-crusted sandwiches and fried cheese and strawberry shortcakes with the singing kind of berries, not the regular kind. Fancy. There was a handful of other witches in the small cafe, sipping on tea and nibbling on dainty cakes in the shape of different animals. There were none of the mean people Seven had come to recognize from the hill, and a wave of relief washed over her. Every time they went into a shop, or a library, or walked through town, the anxiety of having someone call them spare scum, or having to defend herself or Valley or Thorn made Seven want to stay locked up in her house forever. Thorn and the 2 racers talked excitedly about Boggs Ferry and the school year, and although Seven was almost positive they knew Thorn was a spare, they kindly avoided any sorting talk and tried to keep the conversation cheerful. Seven learned that October was Seven's potions tutor in Boggs Ferry, and they had become friends, according to the older girl, which made Thorn blush. Clearly, she hadn't known October considered her a friend. They were nice, these 2 witches, and Seven hoped they'd also be blabbermouths. But just in case they didn't volunteer the information she was curious about, she had a plan. Seven took her black wool cape off and pushed the sleeves of her sweater up just so. It got hot all of a sudden, she said, and waited. She made sure her scratched forearms from their run-in with the cuckoos were on full display, even reaching over the table, rudely, to grab another strawberry-filled marshmallow goose. "Oh," said Tia, "what happened to your arm?" Seven had to work especially hard to hold back a smile. Valley rolled her eyes. "Cuckoo attack," Seven said gravely. "We were lucky we got out alive, actually." Tia and October exchanged looks. Then October leaned in close and whispered, "They've been happening here too?" "Two?" Thorn clasped one hand over her mouth, then brought her voice down to a whisper. "What do you mean, 2? They were all leaning close now, speaking softly. "There was a string of cuckoo attacks in Boggs Ferry last month. Before that, there hadn't been a cuckoo sighting in years, Tia said, and immediately covered her mouth. She and October both looked surprised. "Oh," said October excitedly. But one night, there were 10 sightings in 10 different parts of town. The next night, 20. By the next week, we had 50 of them, and the older witches exchanged looks again. 3 witches were killed, and our town uncle was taken. Now it was the witchlings' turn to exchange looks. How was this possible? And how hadn't they heard about it? Petal was taken in spring. That was months ago. It made sense for the cuckoos and the night beasts to pass Boggs Ferry on their way to Ravenskill. It didn't make sense for them to go back. "Why isn't this in the Squawking Crow?" asked Seven, indignant. She diligently read the 12 Towns paper every week and followed everything their star journalist, Jordan Whisperbrew, wrote. She prided herself on being informed, and the paper not covering the Boggs Ferry attacks was unacceptable. Not to mention, this was crucial information for them if they were going to find the night beast. Well, that's the other thing. Our town grand put a shush order on us so we wouldn't be able to tell other witches, which is why I was so surprised I could tell you any of this. I'm not sure why we could tell you, though, Tia said. Seven smiled. Probably because we're not really witches, and not forever witchlings either. We're somewhere in between till the task gets solved. We're the only ones in this state of magic. The shush order probably didn't count for that. But shush orders are illegal, Thorn said. Shush orders were an arcane type of magic, something their ancestors had used to keep dissenters quiet back when only the wealthiest had any rights. That particular kind of magic, and it was a hex really, had been outlawed hundreds of years ago. Using it to keep any witch quiet now was considered a most heinous offense. Seven had never heard of it used against an entire town, though. That was infinitely worse. There's corruption everywhere, Thorn, Seven said, still upset herself. That's what we've been saying too. Well, what we've been wanting to say. But we haven't been able to talk about it till now, October rubbed her throat. We'll have to find a way to tell our town gran about this, Seven said. Our uncle went missing too. We heard. When did it happen? Tia asked. Just about 3 nights ago now, after we were attacked. We beat the cuckoos, by the way, Valley smiled smugly. But only by accident, said Thorn. And the Ground and Uncle came to help us, since Seven passed out and all, Valley said. Only for a moment, Seven interjected. And then a shadow appeared in the woods, and when the uncle went to confront it, they took his hat, Thorn said. That same night he disappeared. When did the first cuckoo attack happen? Do you remember the date? Seven took out a small notebook and pen from her black cape, prepared to jot down the information like any good reporter would. If the squawking crow wasn't on the job, then she would have to be. She would find a way to get this information to Teordan Whisperbrew if she had to. It happened on the 4th day of fall. I remember because it was our first practice since summer, and I had awful cramps, October said. I had to sit out most of the practice, and our coach freaked out and sent us all home because of the news. Yeah, it was definitely on that night. I remember too, Tia said. Do you remember when your town uncle disappeared? Seven asked. Just about 3 days ago, October said. Same as yours. Seven wrote it down in her notebook and nodded. Tia and October weren't sure of the exact dates of the other cuckoo attacks, but maybe that would be enough to get Seven started. She had some research to do, that was for sure. Thanks for helping us with all this, Thorn said shyly. Of course. Once a raccoon, always a raccoon, right? October smiled at Thorn. We have to go. We have a team meeting in 5 minutes, Tia said. It was really nice meeting you 3. Good luck with everything, okay? The Witchlings smiled, knowing that everything meant the impossible task, and they'd need all the luck they could get. Chapter 17, An Unfortunate Discovery. That night, cuckoos invaded Stormville. The townspeople fought them off, but 3 witches were badly injured. Seven stayed up late watching the telecast report and messaging Valley and Thorn in their group chat. Something was definitely wrong. Unless there was another night beast in Stormville, cuckoos shouldn't have been attacking there too. But that was almost impossible, insisted Valley. Night beasts were rare and didn't hunt in close proximity to one another. There had to be some other explanation. But what? One thing was for sure. The 3 cuckoos and the Witchlings had fought off weren't the only ones. Not even close. Valley and Thorn both had family stuff the next morning, and alone with her thoughts, Seven felt anxiety creep in. She was overwhelmed and afraid. It was one thing to fight a night beast and a handful of cuckoos, but what if there was more than one? What if, like Tia and October had told them, there were 50 cuckoos like there had been in Boggs Ferry? They were no closer to finding the night beast, and there were only 11 days left before they were turned into toads. Seven felt completely helpless. But then she remembered there was one thing she could do on her own. One thing she was really good at. She walked to her parents' room where she knew her dad was sewing holes in his socks using mending spells. And knocked. Come in, Talus said. Dad, can I use your scroller? Talus had a scroller, which he used for his job selling insurance for magical disasters, and it had the latest in searching capabilities and thousands of books loaded in it. If you're careful, of course, Talus smiled. Closer, he said at the waiting needle and thread suspended in mid-air, and it began to mend a pair of red and black striped socks as he took a scroller from his wooden nightstand and handed it to Seven. How are you feeling, kiddo? He said, ruffling her curls. All right, Seven said, considering. Understandable. I'm here, and so is your mom if you need us, her dad said. Where is Mom anyway? Setting up for tonight's council meeting, Tallis said, and got back to his sewing. Just put the scroller back in the drawer when you finish, and don't drop it. Beefy broke the last one, and my boss won't be happy if I break another. Sure thing, Dad. Thanks. Seven went to her room and punched in the date Dia had told her. The one when... Sure thing, Dad. Thanks. Seven went to her room and punched in the date Tia had told her, the one when the cuckoo attacks had begun, along with the words, Boggs Ferry. The very first hit took her to an article that said there had been a Boggs Ferry Town Council meeting that night. She kept reading. They'd been voting on something called Amendment S. What's Amendment S? Seven wondered aloud while typing it into the scroller. Another string of articles popped up on the black and white screen, and Seven's eyes opened wide as she read the first one. The long contested tradition of spares has come under fire with the introduction of Amendment S, a bill that would expand spare rights. The bill was introduced by the Boggs Ferry Town Grand herself, with the help of the bill's original creator, Nox Cosmos, the Ravensgill Town Grand. It will be voted on the 4th day of fall and is expected to reach other 12 towns next month. Seven sat back against her pillow slowly. So, their town grand had drafted this bill originally. She couldn't believe that some witches wanted to give spares more rights. Something like that could have really come in handy a few weeks ago. She read the article over again, something catching her attention. The night the Boggs Ferry Town Council was supposed to vote on this amendment, there had been the first cuckoo attacks. It said other towns were going to vote on it the month after. Seven typed Stormville, Amendment S, and the article that popped up made Seven slap her hand over her mouth. It said that the Stormville Council had been set to vote on Amendment S too, last night. So, 2 cuckoo attacks, nearly a month apart, both on the night town councils were set to vote on a bill about spares. Strange coincidence. Seven ran back to her parents' room. Dad, she said breathless, what is the council meeting about tonight? Tallis looked up at her from his sock collection. We are voting on this thing. He looked like he was struggling for words. Amendment S. Is that what you're voting on? Seven asked. Tallis opened his eyes wide. How did you... He sighed. Yes, it is. Seven, I don't want you to get your hopes up. Unfortunately, there were some powerful witches who opposed the amendment. Seven explained her theory to her father. Someone was using the cuckoos, or working with them, to sabotage the vote to help spares. If there was going to be an attack, at least Ravenshill could be ready. Tallis was on the phone in a flash, hammering out a plan with the other council members. Meanwhile, Seven began to formulate a plan of her own. If cuckoos were attacking her town tonight, and she was pretty sure they were going to, this was the Witchlings' chance to follow a cuckoo that could lead them to the Night Beast. Chapter 18. A perilous, chaotic, and kind of fun slumber party. I can't believe we're using your baby brother as bait, Thorne said. The Witchlings were having a sleepover that was really a cover for something else. A trap. Tonight was the vote on Amendment S in Ravensgill, and if Seven's theory was correct, there would be another string of cuckoo attacks, making this the perfect time for the Witchlings to strike. They had created a trail of jelly bean fish on the trees, starting with the cursed forest and leading to Seven's backyard, where they had installed a series of bells to alert them to the cuckoo's presence. There, they had placed another lure, an enchanted burlap sack Beefy, complete with his clothes, so the monster would be able to smell him. Once the cuckoo realized it was a fake Beefy, it would leave, and the Witchlings would follow it right to the Night Beast's den. It's not actually Beefy, said Valley. Plus, the Grand warded Seven's house and put extra protections on Beefy's room. He'll be safe. These smell like farts, Seven said, putting another fish in a pot and handing it to Valley. Valley shimmied up the weeping willow in Seven's backyard, placed the pod, and slid down with the grace of a jaguar. It's probably your breath. Seven gave Valley a sarcastic smile. Okay, that was the last pod. They walked through Seven's yard, the sun making rainbows against the crystal wind chimes hanging from the trees. It would be at least 4 hours before it was dark, and the cuckoos came out. So they made their way up to Seven's room to wait. Oh, I almost forgot. I have a surprise for you goats. I'll be right back. Thorn dashed out the door, and they heard a door downstairs creak open, then shut. Thorn's footsteps raced back up the stairs seconds later. Okay, she said out of breath. I asked your mom to put these in the coat closet so it wouldn't spoil the surprise. You ever considered trying out for running club? Asked Valley. You were frogging fast. Thorn blushed. In her arms were 3 large garment bags made of what looked like fancy yet sturdy materials. I worked hard on these for days. I really hope you like them. She laid the bags out on Seven's bed. This one is yours, Seven. She pointed to the first bag. The middle one is Valley's, and this is mine. We should all open them at the same time. Thorn was jumping up and down and clapping, and her cheeks were bright red. She looked happier than Seven had ever remembered seeing her. Okay, don't short circuit. Seven smiled and walked over to her bag. Valley and Thorn did the same, standing in front of their respective bags. On the count of 3, we open the zippers carefully, okay? Thorn said. Valley and Seven nodded, and Thorn began to count. 1, they put their hands on the zippers. 2, they pulled down in unison. 3, they pushed the fabric of the garment bag aside, and Seven's mouth was agape in wonder. Inside the bags were beautiful red outfits, the color of their witching pendants, but somehow Thorn had made the color Seven always thought to be ugly and muddy absolutely stunning. Seven reached out to touch her outfit, and her eyes welled with tears. A thick, shimmering red thread stitched every piece into place. The fabric was supple and luxurious feeling. Each outfit came with a cape, dark red pants, except for Thorn's assemble, since she usually only wore skirts, and a matching shirt and vest. Each vest came fashioned with a harness that held small vials for Seven, holsters for Valley's blades, and darts for the 3 of them. Thorn's outfit had gloves with needle-like spikes that sprung up from the knuckles, and Seven's had a small golden dagger that gleamed in the light. These are incredible, Thorn, Seven said. We're going to look so dope. Thorn's eyes lit up. I was hoping you'd say that. These remind me of a humdrum story my mother told me about. Valley picked up her cape, spun it around and onto her shoulders expertly, and buttoned the brass button at the neck. Little Red Riding Hood. The story goes that a young girl is going to her grandmother's house, but stops to pick flowers on her way even though her mother told her to go straight there. She's tricked and almost eaten, until a woodsman saves her. I want to try the whole thing on. What tries to eat her? Seven asked. I don't remember. It was something ugly. We should try these on to make sure the measurements are all okay, and also to take a picture, Thorn said excitedly. Valley and Seven both groaned in unison. Must we document everything? Asked Seven. Yep, I'll change in the bathroom. Thorn grabbed her garment bag and sprinted out the door. I'll go in the closet. Seven took her outfit into the large closet in her room, leaving Valley to change in the room. These feel so nice, Seven said, slipping the pants on. I don't think I've ever worn anything this expensive. I'm scared to rip it. Her face went red, suddenly thinking how silly she must sound to Valley. She probably wore expensive stuff like this all the time, being from the hill and all. I know, it feels like wearing a marshmallow, Valley said. A bit of the embarrassment Seven felt waned, and she put on the rest of her outfit. There was even a hat, she noticed, and she picked up the short red witch's hat. And put it on. Everything fit like a glove, and once again Seven found herself in awe of her new friend's talent. Are you both dressed? Seven, don't you dare come out of the closet yet, Thorn yelled from the hall. Yep, Valley and Seven said in unison. She's still in there, don't worry, Valley said. Okay, on 3 I walk in and Seven walks out. Valley, you just stand there. Seven giggled. Thorn was so excited, and it made her happy that despite everything they were going through, despite the reason for needing these outfits in the first place, they could still find pockets of joy and pride. It made her hopeful that they'd be able to find happiness no matter what their fate. Together, they could find happiness in the most unexpected places. 1, 2, 3. Thorn opened the door at the same time as Seven, and they both stepped in the room. Their suits matched perfectly, and each one complemented the others in a way that, without knowing exactly why, you knew you needed all three suits to be complete. It was some sort of magic Thorn had infused in them. Seven knew because she suddenly felt braver than she ever had. Shivers ran over Seven's whole body. They looked better than cool. They looked formidable and prepared and like... "We look like a coven," Valley said. "I was just gonna say that," Seven said. "I'm so happy," Thorn said, sobbing. Seven and Valley ran to Thorn and threw their arms around her, which meant they were also hugging. For a second, Seven thought about pulling away, but when she noticed Valley didn't so much as flinch, she hugged the still crying Thorn even tighter. "Do they fit okay?" Thorn asked between post-sob hiccups. "Perfectly," said Valley. "Thorn, you really did a kick-toed job on these. I'm especially surprised by the color. I know you thought the red in our pendants was ugly, but I wanted to show you that in another light it could be quite beautiful." Seven smiled, knowing exactly what Thorn meant. "Hey," Thorn said, wiping her eyes as she pointed in the direction of Seven's plants. "Speaking of beautiful, I didn't know plants could be see-through." Seven ran over to her plant collection, and then she screamed. "What?" Valley asked, startled. "I've been trying to grow this plant for months," Seven said. The opal hawthornia had been the most elusive of Seven's plant projects. She tried everything, from changing its position every 27 minutes one weekend to feeding it worm guts. Nothing had worked, so Seven had just watered the plant every morning in hopes of a miracle. It had just sprouted a very small leaf the other night, but Seven had not noticed that it had grown to full size. "I can use these to create invisibility potions. They won't work for very long, and you cannot tell my parents because I'm not even supposed to have this plant," Seven chuckled. "I can't believe it finally worked." Seven screamed again just as Fox called them down to dinner. They reluctantly changed out of their outfits, but not before modeling them for Seven's whooping parents. Dinner was mashed plantains with butter and fried cheese, Seven's favorite. "We shouldn't be long," Tallis said as they were clearing the dishes after dinner. "Will you be okay?" Seven asked. "Yes. The Grant's Guard is stationed all around town and at the Hall of Elders. If anything does happen, we'll be ready. And Grelda next door will come over to make sure you girls are okay while we're gone too." "We don't need a babysitter. No offense to Mrs. Villalobos, but we're too old," Seven said. "Also, if their plan worked, they would end up having to defend her and not the other way around," Seven thought, but did not say. Mrs. Villalobos was a real nice witch, but she was not a fighter. "Well, just humor us then," Fox winked at Seven, "because we're not asking. We're telling you." Seven cringed. "Yes, ma'am." "Roasted," whispered Valley, smiling as she helped dry the dishes. Seven's parents left for town after putting Beefy to bed, and Mrs. Villalobos had come over and promptly fallen asleep in front of the telecast of Real Witchwives of Hastings on Pumpkins. Ha! Some protection she was. The Witchlings waited until she was snoring deeply and got back into their outfits. "I feel like a warrior," said Seven, putting both hands on her hips. They were taking turns examining themselves in the mirror. "We still need to take a picture. Don't forget," said Thorn. "I'm feeling kind of sleepy, come to think of it," said Valley. Seven gave a big, exaggerated yawn. "Me too." Thorn put her hands on her hips. "I know you goats are faking, and we can't go to sleep. The cuckoos are coming." The witchling shivered. Okay, one pick." Seven put her hand over Thorn's shoulder and posed. Valley slid over to Thorn's other side, hands crossed in front of her chest. "Say geese!" Thorn held up her portaphone and snapped a picture of the three of them. Valley didn't change her position, but she had shifted a bit closer to Thorn, and there was a small, shy smirk on her face. Valley had her tongue out on one side, holding up two fingers like she'd seen humdrums do in a textbook once. And Thorn smiled wide. She snapped about 15 quick pictures of them. "You said one," Valley protested when Thorn had finally given them the go-ahead to relax. "We need options." Thorn was already shifting happily through the pictures on Seven's bed. "All jokes aside, we should get ready to stand watch," said Seven, looking out her window. The sun had dipped behind the mountains, and soon darkness would fall. Gonna go check on Beefy, and then we can go wait by the patio door. I am pretty sure I can hear Mrs. Villalobos snoring downstairs. Seven shook her head before stepping out into the hall. As she tiptoed toward Beefy's room, Mrs. Villalobos' snores were so loud the floor was shaking. Wow, she must have had a really long day or something. But the closer Seven got to Beefy's room, the more the floor shook. That was really weird. Her heart skipped a beat, not from excitement, but from fear. She picked up the pace. Even though Beefy's room was just at the end of the hall, the distance seemed to stretch out infinitely. The walls grew larger, the lights dimmed, the floor beneath her feet extended for miles and miles. Seven could not get to Beefy's room quickly enough because what she heard wasn't snoring. It was growling. Seven threw open the door of her baby brother's room and found a cuckoo standing over his crib. The large double windows in Beefy's room were flung open, his white curtains fluttering in the night wind. Somehow, the cuckoo had gotten in, despite the bells, despite all her parents' protections, despite the grand's protections. Beefy was fast asleep, and the cuckoo's outstretched hands were just inches from his chubby face. Seven had one chance to catch it off guard before it grabbed her brother, and she did the only thing she could think of to do in that moment. She lunged at it. The cuckoo roared as Seven crashed into its body. Its fur felt like icicles, and it smelled like a dead animal. And Seven scrambled away from it as the cuckoo did the same in the opposite direction. Beefy cooed, waking up as Seven struggled to get a blow dart from her harness. The cuckoo stood up and growled, baring its sharp teeth at Seven. It was smaller than the ones they'd seen by the river, and it had no signs of injury anywhere. That meant there were definitely more than 3 of them, and there could be more on the way. Seven ran with a blow dart in hand to make sure she did not miss this time. The cuckoo was too fast, however, and sent her flying to the other side of the room with a thud. Moving quicker than lightning, the cuckoo whipped around to Beefy's crib, trying to grab the baby. But Beefy lashed out, much like he did when he threw a tantrum, arms and legs flailing and screaming at the top of his lungs. But this time, each flail and kick landed squarely on the cuckoo's face and body. The cuckoo snapped, growling and drooling all over Beefy's crib, but the baby did not look scared. Beefy looked mad. He balled up his tiny fist and pummeled the cuckoo with forceful blows, and the monster actually whined, holding its injured snout. Seven got to her feet, the room spinning around her. She felt something cold and wet at the back of her head, and she was pretty sure she was bleeding. The cuckoo bent its head down toward the crib and growled. Beefy kicked the monster with one bare foot, his cute toes wiggling in the air. Then Beefy climbed onto the far railing of his crib, jumped, and came down hard on the cuckoo's head, pummeling it with punch after punch. "Seven! Beefy!" Valley ran into the room and immediately charged towards the cuckoo. "Are you okay?" Thorn was just behind her. She helped Seven up from the floor, her hands shaking. "Yeah." Seven got up and ran towards the cuckoo. Then, with both hands, grabbed its tail and pulled it back and away from Beefy and Valley, who were fighting it off together. Taken aback from the sudden force, the cuckoo stumbled backward. Thorn grunted as she picked Beefy up and placed him back in his crib, and Valley moved quicker than lightning, slashing the cuckoo's shoulder with her twin blades from behind. "Do the shrouded spell, Seven," Valley said. Seven raised her hands, about to intone a spell that made shadows look like monsters, when the cuckoo let out a piercing scream and spun around towards Seven. It was breathing heavily, its muscled shoulders going up and down, as the room shook from the force of its growls. Seven froze in fear. Thorn stepped in front of Seven, her hands up to intone the spell, and the cuckoo snarled and swiped at her face, leaving 3 lines across her cheek. Thorn's head whipped to the right, and her hand flew up to protect her face too late. Seven jumped in front of her right as the cuckoo stretched its long snout out, opened its mouth, and chomped. It came away with a chunk of Seven's hair, and one of its teeth had grazed her arm, but it hadn't done much more. Beefy was trying to climb out of his crib and complained in unintelligible baby talk except for one word: monstru. Valley thrust her weapon at the cuckoo, and it leaned back to dodge, but Beefy caught it square in the ear with a right hook. Finally, Seven raised her hands and screamed, "Silhouetta!" She weaved her hands in and out, making the shape of what she imagined a night beast might look like, and the shadow of the beast grew and grew on Beefy's wall like a hand puppet show gone wrong. Drool fell from its mouth, its eyes burned red, and even though Seven knew this was not the night beast, her heart still thumped with fear. Seven directed the shadow to the window, and now was the moment of truth. Would the cuckoo follow? The cuckoo turned towards the shadow, sniffed the air, and let out a blood-curdling scream. It turned back to Valley, who hit and slashed the monster's leg, bobbing and weaving like a boxer. Thorn stood near Beefy, hands up, and ready to protect him if the cuckoo came too close. "Shronido!" Seven screamed. If they couldn't make it follow their shadow monster, they would scare it. A loud crash exploded all around them, like thunder times 1,000. The cuckoo covered its pointed ears and shook its head violently as Beefy began to cry, but it still didn't run. Okay then, Seven thought. They had to take it down. "Change of plans," Seven said. She began to treat the monstru like a pinball. Any direction it went, it was met with another hit. The other witchlings followed her lead. Thorn slashed at its side. Valley plunged her weapon into its leg. Seven struck out with her dagger, and Beefy punched the monster's head like it was a boxing bag, back and forth and back and forth. They did 3 more rounds of hit, slash, punch, duck, and weave to avoid the cuckoo's counterattacks. But no matter how hard they hit it, the cuckoo wasn't going down. "Why isn't it dying?" Thorn screamed between attacks. "And where in the froggin' swamp is our babysitter?" Seven asked. "Cover me. I'm gonna end this now." "Seven, we can push out the window. The 3 of us can keep attacking till it falls," Thorn said. "No, I'm gonna kill it now. I can do this," Seven said. "Thorn's right," Valley yelled between hits. "If we push it out, it might survive and we can follow it if it leaves. And if it dies, at least Beefy is safe." "Roar!" The cuckoo roared, lashing out. Seven's head spun. She was about to shake her head no again, to tell her coven she could do it, when she remembered the Grant's words. "Let them help you." "Okay," Seven said. "You're right. Let's push it out." Valley gave the cuckoo one good kick of her boot, and the cuckoo went flying backward while she and Thorn ran to Seven's side. They stood shoulder to shoulder, hands up. "On 3, we do the Viento spell. 1, 2... Seven took a deep breath, steadied herself, and shot. 3! Viento! The witchlings screamed at once, and the room erupted into full-blown chaos. The cuckoo went completely feral, trying to hold on to anything it could as the strong wind spell pushed it towards the window. It smashed Beefy's dresser, pulled the wallpaper from the walls. "It's almost out," Thorn yelled. "Don't put your hands down," added Valley. "Seriously, where is our babysitter?" Seven screamed. And with one final gust of wind, the cuckoo was up off the ground and through the window. It landed outside with a bone-cracking thump, and the witchlings ran to see if they could follow it, but there would be no tracking tonight. "Ah, nuts, we killed it again," said Thorn. There was a small knock at the door, and the head of an old lady peeped in. "Do you girls want any cookies?" Mrs. Villalobos asked with a smile. She seemed not to notice that there was blood everywhere, and the 3 witchlings slumped by the window in various states of injury. "You have got to be kidding me," Seven said. "Can you please call our parents?" Valley asked, and Mrs. Villalobos nodded and left the room, seemingly unfazed. "Beefy's A-OK," Thorn said, picking up Beefy, who was holding out his arms. "Oh, goats, you're heavy." "Beefy's his name for a reason," Seven said, still trying to catch her breath. "I remember what the thing was," Billy gasped from the floor. "What thing?" Seven asked, also out of breath. "From the story. The monster from the Little Red Riding Hood story. It was a wolf." The Grand returned to Ravenskill the morning after the cuckoo attacks. Attacks with an S, because there had been more than the one at Seven's house. In total, 4 families had been targeted throughout town that night, though thankfully nobody had been hurt too seriously, except for one witch. Somewhere between Elvenfoot yarns and thingamajigs and her home, Perdita Elvenfoot was snatched from the snowy and well-lit path. Eleven read in the Squawking Crow the next day. Cuckoo tracks were found along the path, with droplets of blood confirmed by the local witch doctor to be a match for the victim. Seven shook her head as she put the newspaper down. Tia and October had said this was also happening in Boggs Ferry, but that reporters were banned from writing about it by the Gran and uncle of that town. The Gran had only arrived this morning, and perhaps she did not come back in time to stop the reporters from writing about it. But if she had, would she have used a shush order too? And why were the town leaders interfering with news the public had every right to know? The Witchlings were supposed to be hunting a night beast right now, and Seven knew that's what her focus should be. But what if it was all connected somehow? Whatever the truth was, Seven had a plan to find out. And we will stop right here. The next chapter will be at chapter 19, Totally Spies. But that is for the next video.